How did you get involved with the film?
So the movie came together pretty smoothly, honestly, which is something that you never hear with movies. The script was actually sent to me by a producer who was interested in making it and thought I might respond to the material. And I already knew Brea, and we had never worked together, so I was sort of excited to read her work. And then I read it, and it was a really interesting challenge, I would say, was the number one thing. And so I called her, and I sort of, we had a conversation. I said, this is my perspective. Here's how I see it coming together. And she was into it. So then the next step was we went back to the producers, and yeah, they were into it as well. And they liked the sort of pairing of Brea and myself as the sort of creative minds behind the film. And yeah, so we moved forward. So it was really just, the reading the script and just really responding to it, and then having a good conversation with Brea out of that read that brought me in.
You said you kind of knew her, but once you kind of got started to work with her, how did that kind of be before you even started shooting?
Oh, yeah. I think there was a lot of sort of trust and mutual respect between us before we started working. And so sort of that like base layer of honesty and friendship, I think really helps, because it sort of takes a lot of the showboating or ego or any of that stuff out of the conversation. It was just sort of a very grounded conversation about how to make this movie happen, really from the beginning all the way through the whole process. So yeah, she's very, very collaborative, and I think we felt like we knew how to make this movie, and so it was really just about like, okay, how do we get this done in an efficient way that's going to be really cool. So it was a lot of sort of shared responsibilities, and of course, when the time came for her to sort of step into the role of May, I think she felt very comfortable doing that, because she knew, that we sort of had it under control, and we had had so many conversations leading up to that. So, yeah, it was a very sort of pleasant experience.
So you would say her being kind of the writer and lead actress made it maybe a little bit easier for you?
Yeah, I don't know if it was easier per se, but I think that there is an advantage to the writer being the lead. I think the other actors really like that, because it makes them feel like, oh, if I have a question, or, there's an intimacy to the performances. Also, I would say, like, a lot of the actors that came on board were personal friends of either mine or Brea's. So really, like, the whole way through was just a very sort of intimate, casual vibe. And yeah, I think being that connected to the material, I think always helps, and everybody sort of feels, there's a feeling of like, oh, this is a passion project. This is not just something we're all doing just to do it. This is something that's really important to the lead people in the project. So, yeah.
There's obviously a lot of important messages in the movie, and I want to get to that in a second. But before that, since being a horror fan, I kind of want to talk about the killer here. How did you kind of develop the killer playing opposite of May?
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. Initially, he was much more of like a Michael Myers type. Like, he was just sort of a big dude in a jumpsuit. And so we really refined him a lot over the process. We sort of liked, some of the initial images I pulled were inspired by some sculptures, modern sculptures that really played with the human face and sort of like distortions of the human face. And I was interested in this idea of like, if you saw this guy from a distance, you might not necessarily know he's wearing a mask. It might just feel like there's something off about him. And so that was really a jump-off point in a lot of ways, sort of thinking about like, okay, what could we do that's interesting in the masked killer subgenre? Especially since the movie is a horror movie, but I almost think it's like wearing the skin of a slasher movie. It's like really is a satire in its heart. And so being able to play around with our masked killer and play with those tropes that sort of take one step to the left with him was really fun. And we like the idea of him being like a little bit more put together, because he is a reflection of May. So May is very sort of refined. She wears nice clothes. She's sort of posh. There's like a air about her that is sort of well dressed. And so we wanted him to be a reflection of her in that way. And so a lot of it came from that, even down to, casting somebody who wasn't like 6,000 feet tall. He's a little bit closer to her size. So that was really the process with him. And it was a lot of fun. We worked with Hunter Smith, who plays the masked killer, with the physicality and just sort of finding how this guy moves and playing with him as a reflection of Brea's character, and everything sort of came up from that initial concept.
I'll just say that it was killing me not to kind of see a good, clear picture of his face.
Of his face, yeah.
I was like, I need to see this guy one way or the other. What's happening here?
I know. I know, it's frustrating, and I think that's part of the message, it's like you can't quite, you're like almost there, but it's this like really insidious thing where you never quite get a clear picture of it, So that was part of the intention, and I'm really happy with how the mask turns out. I think it's actually quite creepy, so it worked out really well, I think.
Oh, it definitely did. And talking about some of those death scenes, did they end up being really fun to shoot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, always. It's always fun to play with with blood and splatter and all that kind of stuff and stunts. I think we had a lot of fun with that. We were all really looking forward to those scenes because that's sort of like the fun stuff. And again, Hunter, who we cast as this killer, is himself a stuntman, so that was always intentional to be able to sort of have him do a lot of that stuff. That was really important from the beginning to do that. And then Brea actually did a lot of her own stunts as well. So, we had a lot of fun. I think that's like when the most people are crowded around the monitor, because they're like, oh, I want to see how this turns out. That's always like a sort of fun part of the day.
Especially the one scene she gets doused pretty good with blood.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We definitely had a lot of fun. A lot of laughter on set and sort of people having a good time. And Brea's such a good sport, and she's died many times. So I think it was fun for her to finally be on the other end of it and be the one, killing the bad guy.
Well, that's all the fun part. But obviously the movie has a message here, and or different messages depending on your perspective. And I was kind of, from your point of view, and obviously since you were putting the film together, what do you think is the main message you guys were trying to get across here, or that you want to get across?
Yeah, I think the movie is really about, unfortunately, a really universal experience that a lot of women, probably all women, have at some point, which is that they're not believed. Bad things happen and then they're not believed, or society minimizes it. And there is an absurdity to that experience of being told, what you know to be true is not true, or it's being minimized, or it's being sort of distorted. And so I think the brilliant thing that Brea did with her script is turn it into this sort of horror satire, very, very dark comedy that really exposes how ridiculous it is. And so I think that conversation is really our only intention. At no point do we suggest sort of here's the solution. Here's the answer. We don't know what the answer is. We just wanted to sort of put it forward as an experience, and then sort of hopefully let audiences sort of have a conversation out of that, right? And they can sort of talk about their own perspective, what they think that people could do, society could do better, what the authorities could do better, times in your own life that you haven't been the best friend or the best of allies to somebody who needed help or needed to be believed or needed something, that you weren't able to give. And so I think those conversations is really our intention, rather than, trying to point a finger or blaming somebody. It's really just more about, having a conversation about real experiences that people have. And hopefully, letting those conversations grow and become more sophisticated is really, really the goal and the message.
And some people have seen the movie already. Have you seen any of those kind of reactions to it? Because I was kind of interested in seeing the different perspectives of guys who watch the movie versus women who watch the movie and their kind of reaction to it.
I think it's kind of what you expect. A lot of dudes dismissive, and they're really not interested in having those conversations. But I will say, like, the majority of real nuanced conversations that I've had with men and women and everybody in between is been really positive and really interesting, and I love hearing people's different perspectives. The thing that we hear the most is women saying, yes, this is my own experience reflected on screen, and that was really meaningful for them to see it sort of posited that way by a team of women filmmakers. I think was really satisfying, and I think that they then the experience of maybe their partners who are maybe men who watched the movie with them also went through this experience of like, oh, I didn't realize you felt that way, or that you had that experience. And so hearing about the conversations, like I was saying before, that came out of the viewing was really what Brea and I have heard the most. And I don't really. I try to stay away from social media and stuff, so I don't know. Probably some crazy conversations. But I think that's really been it. And even with the men who were working on the film, I think we had a lot of really cool conversations because they really wanted to make sure that they were hearing women's perspectives as they were sort of doing their own jobs on set. And so I think a lot of that really like sort of respectful, nuanced, meaningful conversation that we were having on set was exactly, what we're seeing now from a lot of people who are watching. And, I think horror audiences are really sophisticated, and they're capable of having these nuanced conversations. And so it's been fun seeing people sort of enjoying having those conversations.
Well, we love seeing those conversations. To me, one of the interesting things, at least that I took away from it, is seeing the part where Brea's kind of has to decide, does she want help from other women or does she not? And she kind of battles it back and forth. And that was at least one of the themes that I kind of got from it.
Yeah, and seeing a flawed woman, I think, is really important. So, like, not this perfect final girl who does everything right, but somebody who's just very real and grounded and trying to figure it all out. That was really important for us as well.